Hi everyone, it's Nichol Spohr here today. Welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be creating this ink smooshed crackle background from the last release from Simon Says Stamp called Let's Connect. I asked what you wanted to see, and the overwhelming response from that release was the crackle or reverse crackle background. So I'm going to use the reverse crackle today with another new stamp die combination from that release. This is the Summer Roses Gina K exclusive. Let's start with our crackle background. I am going to take this and place it in my MISTI, and I'm also going to take a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel of Bristol smooth cardstock. I did choose to use Bristol. You could use watercolor cardstock. You could probably even use regular Nina cardstock or whatever basic white cardstock you use. When I'm using a water technique, I will often use a watercolor or the Bristol, and so I chose Bristol today. We're going to ink up the background with some clear embossing ink and stamp that crackle background all over our panel. I did ink it up and stamp it twice before popping it out and sprinkling on Simon Says Stamp white embossing powder. Trying to be really careful and just hold on to the edges here. As I tip this at an angle, you can see the detail of this, which I totally love. I love that distressy type of look and background, and you're going to see how the ink smooshing works super awesome with this background because it's going to give you that really distressy type of look. I am then going to heat set my embossing powder, and then is going to come the magic. Now you could definitely ink blend over this, paint over this, do all kinds of embossed resists techniques over your embossed background. The ink smooshing, what I love about it is it's really, with your blending brushes, you're a little bit limited. This is going to give you that really blotchy type of effect, which is definitely what I was going for. I was looking for kind of like that crackle type background that's super organic and not perfect at all. We're going to be using Speckled Egg, Antique Linen, and Gathered Twigs Distress Oxide Inks. I am going to take a little water and add them to each. I was going to just drip water and that wasn't working great, so I actually opted to just take a mister and give each color a little spritz of water. My favorite way to ink smoosh is just taking leftover packaging from the stamps. I usually keep quite a few of these. Pick up the color and start smooshing it into the background. You can see that anything that is embossed is going to be resisting that ink, and I'm getting that fantastic organic type of distressed background, which I'm totally in love with. This particular background, this is the best. I'm so looking forward to trying this in other colors because this turned out so well. I'm also incorporating the Antique Linen and Gathered Twigs. I think they work super great with that Speckled Egg. Speckled Egg is one of Tim's latest Distress Oxide inks. He just released another one this week, which I'm so excited to play with. But Speckled Egg is a fantastic addition. It's that beautiful blue color that works so great with lots of different color combinations. So I kind of have made a mess of my background. I'm just going to clean off my plastic. I'm actually going to clean up this ink. This isn't exactly perfect yet, which is the great thing about this. You can keep applying ink until you get the look you want. So I cleaned my plastic because I wanted more blue in my background. So I'm going to just press Speckled Egg onto my glass work surface, spritz it with water, then pick up the ink with my plastic and lay it down. I can do this with as many colors as I need to until I get this completely covered. I'm going to go ahead and lay down a little bit more color and just keep adding that in until I get the effect I want, and make sure and get enough coverage so you really see the crackle background. Look how awesome this is. I'm really, really excited about this background. I could see using this for all kinds of things. Imagine some pumpkins on this background, maybe for a fall themed card. Really, really pretty. Now once I have all the ink applied and I have it the way I want it to look, which I'm not exactly happy yet, I am going to add a couple more little areas of light brown and dark brown. But I'm going to set this aside to dry while I stamp my remaining images, color them in, do the stamping for my sentiment, all of the rest of the things. This can just air dry while I work on that, and then I can come back to it. If you're in a hurry, by all means, go ahead and hit it with a heat tool to speed up that drying process. So we are going to be stamping the large rose image and also 2 additional leaf images from the Summer Roses stamp set. This is a Gina exclusive for Simon Says stamp, a beautiful 6x8 stamp set. Has roses images. We have the rose with the stem and the leaves that you see here. There's leaves, there's roses, and then amazing sentiments. 2 large scripty sentiments and lots of words. I'm going to stamp that image on Bristol Smooth cardstock with a clear embossing ink, heat emboss with white embossing powder, and then we're going to heat set that and color it in. To kind of have everything tie together and work together really great today, I thought it would be fun to show how you can watercolor and kind of paint the color on with Distress Oxide inks. So we're going to continue with our Distress Oxides for our image. The embossed areas will resist the ink. I'm pressing the ink colors I want to use. In this case, we're using Bundled Sage first on my glass work surface, and then I'm picking the color up with a water brush pen and painting it on. So we're going to paint our stem and leaves first with Bundled Sage. I thought I'd use peeled paint, and I immediately realized I didn't like that. It was a little too limey green. We're actually going to take Speckled Egg and paint in some blue on those leaves, and I ended up loving how that turned out. When you combine it with Bundled Sage, it just really helps make those leaves really pop. Then I'm going to let that sit and dry for a minute before I add in any extra color. We're going to take Antique Linen and give our rose an all-over wash of Antique Linen, which kind of takes on, yes, it's a brown color, but it takes on kind of a yellow property when combined with Fossilized Amber. So I'm adding in Fossilized Amber next. Give it a little bit more of a yellow tint. And once we have that, I'm going to take a little Gathered Twigs, and this is where we're going to add some depth and dimension. So I'm going to paint in that in the leaves first and blend it out with the green and blue colors I used. And then we're also going to add in some of the Gathered Twigs to the flower to deepen and darken some of those areas. Definitely going a little bit more muted with my color choices today, but loving how this turned out. Now I want to make sure this is completely dry before I die cut this with the Coordinating Summer Roses die. I let it sit for a little bit. I worked on some other things and came back to it. You can also, again, hit this with a heat tool to speed up that drying process if you want to. Completely up to you there. I had forgotten to stamp those 2 additional leaves that I want to use, so I will go ahead and stamp those as well. Look how beautiful that rose looks on the background. Really loving that. While I have all my inks already out on my glass work surface, kind of serving as a palette, I do want to stamp anything else that I want to color before I clean that up and move on to the rest of the card. I'm just going to use a little scrap here of this cardstock. I like to try to use every little bit and piece, especially of my Bristol Smooth, all of my cardstock. I always keep my scraps because usually you can find a use for them in some project somewhere. We're going to paint those leaves really quick, let those dry, and die cut them. And then we're going to move on to the sentiments. What I love is the 2 large scripty sentiments in the Summer Roses stamp set have coordinating dies. So I don't have to stamp that on the background. I'm able to die cut that. We're going to take some smooth white cardstock. We are going to prep our cardstock with a powder tool so that we can get the embossing powder to just stick to the stamped image and hopefully not migrate anywhere else. I did ink it up and stamp it twice to make sure the coverage was good. This is with the Simon Says Stamp Clear embossing ink. And then I'm embossing this with antique gold embossing powder. So we're going to pull in a little bit of gold. That's going to kind of help really make our sentiment pop, and it's going to tie into the frame we're going to create into our background as well. Look how big and bold this is. The other sentiment is in joy, and they both work so beautifully. We're going to just line that up and die cut our sentiment. I'm going to use a little low tack tape to hold that in place while I die cut this. Now, there's lots of extra words in the Summer Roses stamp set. I actually opted to use a sentiment from a different stamp set. I am going to be using the stamp set that was included in the September 2020 card kit of the month called Just Miss You. I'm going to use that stamp set and use the phrase I miss you from that to stamp on this great sage cardstock scrap. This is a Lawn Fawn cardstock that I think the color ties beautifully into the rest of the colors we're using for our card. I stamped that with clear embossing ink and heat embossed with the antique gold embossing powder as well. We kind of have most of our components. I have one last thing I'm going to do, and then we can put it all together. My favorite thing when I have a background like this, and I don't want everything to appear to be just kind of floating in outer space, I love to die cut a thin frame from that to kind of help frame it up all together, but we're not going to lose much. Especially if you use one of these Simon Says Stamp A2 thin frames. This is one of my all-time most used favorite dies ever. Love this die set. We're going to take the third largest from this set and die cut it, center it, die cut it from the background. You're going to see when I peel away my low tack post-it tape that I used to hold that in place, it's going to leave us with a larger frame, the center panel, and then this tiny little skinny frame, which I'm going to actually discard. We're going to die cut that frame again from a gold mirror cardstock and replace that skinny frame with the gold mirror, which is going to tie in to our stamped and embossed sentiment, both of our stamped and embossed sentiments really. And that way we're hardly getting rid of any of our background, but yet it just instantly draws your eye in to the little scene or vignette that we're creating in the center of the card with our flowers, leaves, and sentiments. I'm going to adhere my large frame to my card front first, and then often I use a liquid adhesive to adhere that little thin frame, and I'm not always super happy with the results simply because liquid adhesive can be kind of messy. So I actually took some really thin 1/8 inch Lawn Fawn double-sided tape and placed it right there. My frame's actually going to be skinnier than this, but because I am actually, it's going to be a whole inlaid background, it will all get covered up. And this worked much, much better. So something new that I've done that I've not used before, I really liked this. I'm going to inlay my gold frame. We're going to put some more adhesive in the center and replace the rest of our Crackle ink smooshed background. Look how beautiful, you guys. It turned out amazing. I'm super happy with this. We are then going to put adhesive on the back of our large rose and our large hello sentiment and adhere those down in place. And kind of naturally going to have our stem kind of sitting on right above, I guess, not on, but right above the gold little skinny A2 thin frame. And I like everything to overlap and buddy up and be close to each other. We're going to put a little liquid adhesive behind the little loop at the end of the letter O so it lays flat. And then before I put liquid adhesive behind the loop at the other end of hello, I'm actually going to adhere these leaves. One of them is going to be kind of going through that loop and one will be tucked back underneath. And then we're going to just glue that all down. I used some craft tweezers to pinch those down and hold them in place while the liquid glue dries. We're going to put foam adhesive on the back of our little sentiment strip. This was die cut with a Sentiment Labels die from Simon Says Stamp, another very often used die set. I'm really thinking I need to do a video or at least a post of some sort with my most used tools and dies and things like that. So hopefully that will be coming soon, probably after Stamp Timber, which is coming up very, very soon. We're going to go ahead and add a little heart accent. My last thing, this is a little Trinity Stamps Coffee Bean heart. Coffee Bean is a cute, cute name, but I love the little brown heart and how great it goes with the more neutral and subdued tones of this card. It's so, so pretty. I love a little heart accent. We'll trim off anything hanging off the edges, and this beautiful ink smooshed crackle background card is all finished. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this card featuring the crackle background from Simon Says Stamp. The supplies I used to create my card are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here are a couple more videos featuring Simon Says Stamp stamps and dies that you might be interested in. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to never miss a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll catch you next time.